JamesAllen.com is the online destination to easily design a customized engagement ring and save up to 50% compared to traditional stores. You pick a diamond, whether it's lab-created or earth-created, James Allen has over 200,000 conflict-free stones. Then you pick your ring setting and metal. And if you need some help, they have real-time diamond consultations available, where an expert can walk you through it all. Get 25% off your order at JamesAllen.com, code podcast. That's JamesAllen.com, code podcast.
Imagine the softest sheets you've ever felt. Now imagine them getting even softer over time. I'm here to tell you about Boll & Branch sheets. In a recent customer survey, 96% replied that Boll & Branch sheets get softer with every wash. They're made from the rarest organic cotton and designed to get even softer over time. Try their sheets with a 30-night guarantee plus 15% off your first order with code Odyssey. So head to BOLL&branch.com today. Exclusions apply. See site for details.
This is Kansas State's Felix Enyedike Uzama, and you're listening to the Power Cat Podcast on the 24/7 Sports Podcast Network. Make sure you're subscribing to this show on your favorite podcast provider.
Welcome to another edition of the Power Cat Questions Podcast. Folks, this is your first one of two of this week. Tim Fitzgerald, Zach Carlson, Cole Carmody, and Ryan Gilbert for this edition of the questions, and then he's got to leave because he's got stuff to make, like drinks, like alcohol. Anyhow, we're sponsored by The Fridge Wholesale Liquor. Come to Manhattan, shop at The Fridge, leave, be happy, run out of stuff, come back to Manhattan, shop at The Fridge, leave, be happy. It's the circle of life.
Why do you want them to leave?
Well, they can't stay at The Fridge. They could stay in Manhattan. Now, like you guys, you let people sleep on your couch. Come to The Fridge in Manhattan. If you can't wait to get home to drink it, just head over to Gilbert and Carmody's place, get drunk, pass out on the couch, wet yourself, go home in the morning.
You would not be the first person to do that.
Well, there we go. Shop at The Fridge whenever you're in town, and we welcome everyone listening as the podcast continues to grow, and I think fans are a little fired up about this football season. K-State is 5-1 going into the off week, which is sorely needed. Sorely was selected on purpose. Chris Kleiman's theme of his Tuesday press conference, as I mentioned in the walk and talk, was how beaten up the team is coming out of that Iowa State game. That was an incredibly physical, defense-first game, and he also said a lot of players wouldn't be able to play this weekend if they had a game. So the bye week is really well timed as they move into an incredibly challenging stretch of the schedule coming out of that bye week. TCU and Oklahoma State are the big game in the Big 12 this week, as those two teams share 1B in the standings. They're both 2-0 in the conference, while Kansas State is 3-0. So they're catching up now with what most teams have played. And then K-State, of course, plays at TCU the following week and then comes home to play Oklahoma State. The schedule is getting interesting. But let's get going with your questions from Wabash Station. We're going to crank up the pressure here. We're going to crank this thing out. Who's got them? Who's got them? Who's got them? Who wants them? Who wants them? Okay. Cole, you go.
First question comes from El Camino Cat. What needs to be done for K-State to win their bye week?
Get healthy. I mean, that's it. That's the whole thing. As I mentioned, that they have a lot of injuries. Khalid Duke is the only one that Chris Klieman feels like may be in doubt for TCU, which tells me if there's some question there, it's not structural. He didn't blow a knee. It's probably muscular, and you just don't know the timing on that. It looked like a pulled muscle, maybe hammy. If he pulled a hamstring, man, that can nag you for weeks. So he may not be available for TCU. But on the other side of that, Nate Matlack, Chris Klieman said was probably the healthiest he's been all season, which I thought was interesting because apparently that injury wasn't his first nicked up situation this year. That makes sense. So maybe he'll be close to 100% at TCU, which is something K-State hasn't had.
He didn't start on Saturday either, which I found interesting.
Yeah, no.
I think he's a little bit more injured than we like to.
I think it's a high ankle, and high ankle sprains just suck. I mean, a lot of people say it hurts worse than a broken ankle. So get him past that and see if he can get to be more effective. But, man, they got beaten up. I mean,
You didn't even mention Deuce Vaughn, who
that was incredible.
And Kellis Robinette asked him
Point
today,
blank,
would he have been able to play? And Clemens said he would not. He was not available to finish the game.
No, he was done.
So that makes me think that if K-State was playing TCU on Saturday, he might be in question.
Mm-hmm.
If you go into TCU without Khalid Duke, without Deuce Vaughn, and he mentioned Felix. I don't understand why he mentioned Felix, because all signs that I saw looked like he just got hit in the not so nice area of the human body.
It's technically known as the testicular region.
Thank you. But either way, if they have to get healthy, that's the bottom line. And like we've talked about before, they literally are at the halfway point. This is the perfect time for a bye week, and you literally could not ask for a better scenario unless they were 6-0. And even then, I still contend that the loss to Tulane probably does you more good than people would like to realize.
Yep. I'd like to find out what would be if they hadn't lost.
We'll talk about that later.
I like where this team sits and get them healthy again. I think most of the starters will spend their entire week in therapy, cold tubs, maybe some light lifting, whatever to keep their body fresh. It's time to have a 6-week sprint to the finish line.
Outside of injuries, I think the next thing that if you're a K-State fan or you're K-State, you're looking at the other games in the conference, hoping the teams you'd like to see lose this weekend. Probably a loss from, Oklahoma State and TCU play each other. So that's, you're going to
something will get sorted out.
Something gets sorted out there. Baylor plays at West Virginia on Thursday. You never know there. And then, OU, KU. Oddly, you really want OU to be the team that wins if you're K-State right now. So there's some options as far as viewing football games this weekend. Definitely Texas. If Iowa State can beat Texas, that's huge for K-State. Basically, anybody that K-State's already beat, if they're winning football games, that's good for K-State.
Okay.
Ryan Gilbert?
I agree.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm glad you stuck around for this.
Me too. Next question comes from Go Upercat. Much has been said about the team culture this season. Is this cohesiveness going to be the new standard moving forward, or is it just the result of the current roster?
Both. I mean, this is what every coach wants. This isn't something unique to K-State, but I've said this. I think this is a really unique group. I mean, I think they've just hit the incredible combination of well-grounded leaders. If you want to look at a guy like Josh Hayes as being maybe the trash talker, let's not confuse this by saying that these are a bunch of Boy Scouts. They talk some serious trash. I mean, they're out there doing what young guys do in a football game now. But they come back in the locker room. They have a family. They have a real bond feeling in that locker room. They support each other. Adrian Martinez wasn't run down by his teammates after the Tulane game. None of that goes on. It's really an impressive group, and I've never really been around one. And this was always the goal of Bill Snyder, who always said every team's different, which is so true. The chemistry of every team is different. But this is what every coach wants. Chris Kleiman's got it. I think he senses that this could be a special season.
Felix and Ndike Uzama going up to Kobe Savage last week and we're asking him a question about that kiss that Kobe blew. That sums up the culture right now.
Yeah.
I think you want to talk about culture. One of those guys who has completely changed and made an impact is, and maybe, you guys can agree or disagree with me, but Adrian Martinez has completely changed, I think, the outlook that these guys have on this team, because this is a guy who was at Nebraska who had absolutely no team success. He comes to K-State, struggles, and his teammates pick him up. There was that fork in the road, and instead of turning on him, they rallied behind him and completely turned him into a different player. And Adrian is very conscious of that. He's very understanding of that, and he has embraced it. I think his leadership ability has taken this locker room by storm, quite honestly. And every single guy, yeah, you're right, Fitz. They like to talk their stuff, but that's important. They like to talk their stuff together. They don't talk stuff to each other. They talk stuff together. And this is the most cohesive team that I can remember. not just from K-State, but just in general. So, yeah, I think that this can be the standard that's moving forward. The next question has to be, who is that next group? Who is that next group leader when Deuce Vaughn moves on? When Felix Anudike moves on? When Daniel Green moves on? When Adrian Martinez, Cade Warner, all these guys that we presume are going to leave the program, maybe even as soon as this year, who is that next group of guys that steps up? That'll be the real test.
But I think that you look at this group of leaders right now and these group of guys that we get to see week in, week out and talk to, I think that, in how long I've been covering K-State football, I feel like this is the best group of leaders that the team has, at least off the top of my head. I can't think of a time where you can say you talk to a guy and you're like, this guy's a leader. And, that's, 12 deep, 20 deep, they bring guys into that room that are leaders. And I think what makes it feel different right now is these leaders, they feel like they want to leave the program in a better place and they're going to pass it on. I don't know who the next leader is going to be, but I think that, when you hear Deuce Vaughn talk about DJ Giddens and the guys that are underneath them, these guys, I think they care about leaving this place in a good spot once they're gone.
I want to say something about DJ Giddens. I have not come across a young man that was more uncomfortable being in a media room since Darren Sproles. And, as we all know, if you've been a K-State fan for a while, Darren had a speech impediment, which he's worked really hard and is much better now. But D. Scott Fritchen was the only one who could get anything from Darren. He was the Darren whisperer. But the key was get him aside and do his thing. Poor DJ's thrown in. He was the leading running back in this game. He had more yards than Deuce Vaughn. He was essential in them winning the game by having big plays that picked up first downs. Yeah, he needs to work with it, but really shy, quiet kid. His teammates joke that they can't get him to talk. The only topic he wants to talk about is fishing, which I just laughed at. I thought this is beautiful. But still, with that said, what a likable young man. As was I haven't come across a guy that makes me kind of go, yeah, you don't fit here since, and I've totally forgotten his name, the linebacker that transferred.
Brandon Jennings.
First time I met him, oh man, you're not going to last year. You're too me. You're too You're too what's in it for me. It's a fun group. They're really nice guys.
Next question comes from I Like Pickles Cat. Are there parallels between the play hard chart and limiting turnovers and penalties? Are they both extensions of doing the bare minimum?
No, because I don't think anyone's rewarding you, praising you for doing that. I agree that they're the bare minimum, but Bruce Weber would make I said his name.
The play hard chart is the bare minimum.
Right.
I think limiting turnovers and penalties
are like fouls and rebounds or fouls and fouls and turnovers.
Okay, so let me clarify this question. And you guys didn't ask this question, so maybe you don't know the answer. But is he assuming that when Coach Kleiman talks about the importance of limiting turnovers and limiting penalties, and attributes that to success, that should just be what happens in general?
Yeah. See, I think the play hard chart is equivalent to a play hard chart. If Chris Kleiman kept saying, well, I know we lost by 30, but we played hard.
Exactly.
That would be very irritating.
Yeah.
Hey, we might have lost by 20, but we didn't have a single turnover. We didn't have a single penalty.
Yeah.
But we lost by 20.
Right.
That's the play hard chart. When Chris Kleiman does that, you can tell me that, it's the same thing. But right now, it's not.
Limiting turnovers and penalties is not the bare minimum, though.
No, it's literally the equivalent of limiting fouls and turnovers in basketball.
Because, in fairness, you can turn the ball over and you can have penalties and you can still win.
Right.
If you don't play hard,
you're not going to win.
You're not going to win.
Unless you're Texas and you just have so much more talent or something.
Yeah.
But
if you limit turnovers, if you don't limit turnovers, I mean, how many times have we seen the Chiefs, I always talk about them, but it seems like for years and years, these past few years, they always out-penalize their opponents. Like, they have more penalties than their opponents, more penalty yardage than their opponents. It doesn't take a genius just to watch their defense and see how continuously they have pass interference, they have offsides, they have all these stupid mistakes, but somehow they still win the game. So I don't think that limiting turnovers and limiting penalties, it's part of the game. Like, that's going to happen. The other team is trying to cause you to turn the ball over, and they're trying to cause you to commit penalties. It's not a two-way street. You control your own effort. You can't always control the turnovers and the penalties.
Right. I agree. Well
So-
said. Gilbert, you got anything on this? Come on, man.
It's good to see K-State air it out against Iowa State, and you take away the Malik Knowles fumble. They had 2 deep balls for touchdowns.
Right.
So those are plays that could easily end up as turnovers, but they didn't. So it's not like they're just playing super conservatively now. That's not why there's no turnovers. They're finally starting to air it out, and they're still not turning it over.
Yeah. And look, I mean, Malik was playing hard. I mean, he was just kind of reckless with the ball, and it was a turnover. I could be mad at him, upset with the result, even though he was putting in effort for the most part. I did see some plays where he clearly wasn't blocking downfield, but I don't know.
That play,
From that play was the defender. Man,
Yes.
great play.
Yeah.
Malik still got to protect it better, but great play.
Well, Malik's biggest mistake was he got casual, and then he jumped on the ball, and I still don't know how he didn't recover it. That's why I love football. That thing's got pointy, and it squirts out, and it does weird things, and it just that's something you absolutely can control, and that's why turnovers are a little more random than controlling your own effort.
At least he didn't drop the football like Deshaun Jackson at the 1 inch yard line.
right.
All right.
1 inch yard
1 inch yard line.
Oh,
Yeah, I think you
goodness gracious.
too many measurements.
He does that
Interesting.
a lot.
The last question of the first half comes from B Foster 1959. We are 3 weeks away from the men's basketball team facing Washburn in an exhibition game. It seems like there is little to no information coming out regarding the progress being made, who stands out, hype videos, etc. Is this normal, or is Coach Tang paying it close to the vest?
Very close to the best. We've had no media day. I don't know when we will, if we will. I mean, you guys are going to Kansas City for the Big 12 one. Is that next week?
Yeah.
Yes.
And that might be it. I'm just what do I want to say here? As progressive as he's been with how he approaches social media and interacting with fans, limiting actual media attention right now is very fascinating. That tells me maybe he knows he doesn't have that good a team, or maybe he wants them just completely flying under the radar and none of them going in front of a microphone or a TV camera and saying, we're really good and we're going to win the Big 12. So I think he just wants these guys focused on basketball. Don't get distracted. Don't buy into your self-hype. You know, it's all about the grind.
Is that bad?
From a coaching standpoint, no. From a marketing standpoint, yes. But he has compensated with incredible social media marketing. It's not like they need to have a press conference to sell tickets. They're going to sell tickets. But it's also really difficult for us as media members to get a grasp on how good this team will be, what are these kids like, and then offer that information to the fan base, which is all we do. We're a conduit. So we don't have anything to tell you because we have no access. Now, I'm told we can get access to selected players, but with the Big 12 thing coming up, you guys will be there, and we'll do that for now. Maybe we'll get into more of that. But I want a Jerome Tang press conference. We have not had a press conference the day he was hired.
It's odd.
It's odd, but I understand what he's doing.
Well, we had one. No, we had one in the summertime. There was one over the Zoom, right?
Was there?
Yeah.
There was one in the summertime.
I don't remember being on it.
Pretty
I
sure.
remember we
there
did
was
assistance.
It was right before he went on vacation. Nonetheless,
Yeah, I remember that.
one. Yeah, he went to Cabo.
Yep. Nonetheless, I
Yeah,
mean,
you're right.
I think
stand corrected.
I think there's a little bit of more of the I don't want to put these guys out there because I want them to surprise everybody. And again, you're right. He has done an incredible job. Him and his staff have done an incredible job of keeping the interest up while also playing everything close to the vest. I feel like fans are as connected with this basketball program as they have been in years. They don't know hardly any of the players. I mean, let's be honest, guys. The average fan probably doesn't even know who's on the basketball team. Sure, you might know Marquise Noel and Ish Massoud, and you might know the names, but you wouldn't be able to pick them out from, Joe to Steve. So, I mean, this is
So who's all going to Kansas City? Marquise, Noel.
Keontae Johnson and Naquan Tomlin.
No ish. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that's exactly why I brought it up. Now, Keontae Johnson might be one of the best newcomers in the conference, if not the best, if he's healthy. But I'm fascinated by Naquan Tomlin going. This is a guy who never played high school basketball, who went to junior college to play his first organized basketball, grew up playing in Rucker Park, is, 6'10"? Considers himself a guard.
Yeah.
And they're taking him on this trip.
And he has 2 years of eligibility.
He has 2 years of eligibility. And they're taking him to meet the media, which means they think he can handle the hype and pressure and the bright lights. I'm beginning to think he's sneaky good, like really good. Why would you put him in that situation if you didn't have confidence he was going to be one of your better players? And if that's true, this K-State team could be pretty decent.
I think the whole social media thing is why we haven't had a lot of information come out. They're so good on social media. They've gotten the fans.
They don't need us.
They really don't. That's why it doesn't really bring you any value to waste your time. This staff means business. Why waste your time doing all sorts of things that aren't going to get your team better at the end of the day? So, I mean, we saw it last year with Weber. There was a couple scrimmages before football games. Bruce was trying to reach and grab fan excitement from them. Tang doesn't need that. The fans are pumped for the season. Tang does not need any more from the fan base.
They've been great on social media. They've done all this great stuff. They've increased fan interest. They've turned around 180 degrees from Bruce Weber. That's fine, but the honeymoon's over. It's time for X's and O's.
Right.
It's time to put the ball on the court, and let's see. Let's see how good they are. Let's go to a practice. Let's have a press conference. At a certain point, Jerome Tang is being paid to be a basketball coach and not to sit on a couch and interview students.
I would not go that far.
I don't want to make that sound like I'm complaining or making a hot take.
It's really cool, but
it's cool. It's great content. I'm glad that K-State's doing it. But it's October. K-State plays a game in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is. It's time to play basketball.
Have we thought that maybe Jerome Tang and that staff understand the value of football at this school and know that K-State is 5-1, 3-0 in conference, chasing a Big 12 title, and they don't want to make it seem like they're trying to take away the spotlight from the football program?
Okay, here's what I'm thinking.
Because I think that's part of it.
Here's what I'm thinking. As we advance closer to this season, this is a bye week. Next week, Kansas State football plays at TCU. Ideally, that Oklahoma State game will be a 2:30 kick. And if it is, I think we'll have some form of press conference on like Wednesday or maybe Tuesday after football, wherever they want to set it up. That'd be actually the best way to do it, is just bring Tang in at 2:30 or something. But I guess football uses that room. Anyhow.
Do it early. Do it at 11.
Do it at 11. Yeah, do it at 11 before football starts. I'm in. Then we eat lunch and then do football. Then they have an open scrimmage in Bramlage prior to the basketball game. And their first game is the following Tuesday night against Washburn. And then the Monday after that, which would be after they got 3
Texas.
games. Texas would be the Monday night after that. I can see them doing that. And I understand why maybe he's trying to fly it under the radar. But at some point, you need to let people know, hey, we're playing. We got a game on Tuesday. It's an exhibition with Washburn, but we'd love for you to be there. And here's a sneak peek of the team. And you have them almost fully formed before they play. It's just a couple days before you play, and put them out there in a scrimmage. Now, if the game's at 11, you can't do that probably. If the game's at night, you could do that, but it'd probably be a pretty drunk crowd at the Bramlage. But I think if you do, if you have a 2:30 game, go scrimmage at 11. Particularly if it's going to be a nice day. People will show up even earlier to tailgate. Get in there at 11, be done by noon. Everyone goes out and tailgates, get ready for football. So that's my hope. We'll see how it plays out. I would love to get a chance to have a press conference. I'm glad at least we have Big 12 Media Days. That'll be in Kansas City. It's actually a media day, one for men and one for women. But we'll have to make the most of that.
Days. There's 2.
It is days.
Yeah. Okay.
Why doesn't women's football have a media day?
Well, I'll talk to you about that in the break. And we're going to take a break right now so I can communicate why we lack coverage of women's football at Kansas State. We'll be right back on the PowerCat Questions podcast, episode 1 of 2 this week. The best part about episode 2 is we won't have Ryan Gilbert. Well, that's not a good thing. That's a bad thing. Our female listenership will just plummet.
This is Kansas State's Cooper Beebe. The leaders in K-State sports coverage. Will be right back with more of the PowerCat podcast.
If you're in the market for investment-worthy bags, watches, and fine jewelry, Rebag is the answer. Rebag is a luxury resale marketplace where each piece is carefully vetted and verified by experts to ensure quality and authenticity. If you're in the market, use Rebag to buy and sell finds from the world's top brands, including Hermes, Chanel, and Cartier. Head to Rebag.com to get 10% off your first purchase with code REBAG10. Shop today at Rebag.com. That's REBAG.com and use promo code REBAG10 for 10% off your first purchase.
Getting the crew together isn't as easy as it used to be. We get it. Life comes at you fast. But trust us, your pals are desperate for a good hang. And when they hear you stock the party with drinks from Drizzly, they'll be banging down your door. Let Drizzly, the go-to app for drink delivery, take care of the supplies. All you need is an excuse. It doesn't even have to be a good one. It's your dog's birthday. The loquats are finally ripe. Whatever. With Drizzly, you can compare prices on a massive selection of beer, wine, and spirits and get them delivered straight to your door, which means you can entice the crew to leave their houses without ever leaving yours. Whatever the occasion, download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com today. Must be 21 plus, not available in all locations.
This is Kansas State's Daniel Green, and welcome back to the PowerCat Podcast on the 24/7 Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the PowerCat Questions Podcast, sponsored by Fridge Wholesale Liquor. Make sure you go to the Fridge whenever possible when you're in town. And if you're in the area already, please go to the Fridge and check out their new products, the Club Special and the Cape Cod. They're from our sponsors at the Part-Time Beverage Company. It's an Oklahoma family that produces this in Texas, and they got some good K-State friends that connected the dots here, and they're now in those 3 states. Really good products. If you like cranberry, the Cape Cod. If you don't like cranberry and you just like a nice, refreshing lemon lime drink, the Club Special. It's at the Fridge right now and other selected liquor stores around the state of Kansas, and we appreciate the Fridge so very much. Back to your questions from Wabash Station. Ryan Gilbert, I'm giving this to you, so you have a responsibility before you start slinging drinks.
Heard that.
Okay.
From Adam K63 to kick off second half. Is K-State 3-0 in the conference if they had beaten Tulane?
Negative Ghost Rider. We put a fire up on the website earlier on Tuesday before the press conference, but we talked about a little bit about this on the post-game podcast, Fitz and I did, and I don't see how K-State is undefeated if they're 3-0. The point I made, and I'll make it again. K-State lost by a touchdown to Tulane 17-10. That's 7 points, right? Okay.
It's 7.
They they beat Iowa State 10-9. What's the difference between 17 and 9?
8.
That is a touchdown and a 2-point conversion, correct?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, okay.
So
Why are we mathing?
Make your point.
my point is this. If K-State beats Tulane, there's a very good chance they lose that game against Iowa State. Because they had never had any experience playing in a close game where there was not a lot of scoring on offense. They got that under their belt. They learned from their mistakes. So just that correlation 1-to-1, I think K-State loses that game. That's not even discounting the fact that Adrian Martinez, had K-State found a way to beat Tulane, wouldn't have had a wake-up call. He wouldn't have had a conversation with Chris Kleiman. They wouldn't have had all this adversity to go through. And they probably lose to Texas Tech. They probably maybe lose to Oklahoma too. So those scenarios combined, there is absolutely no way on this side of the North American continent in any universe that K-State would have beaten and Iowa State, Oklahoma, and Texas Tech and still be undefeated at 6-0. So the answer to that question, no, K-State is not 3-0 in conference.
Zach, let's have a little aside here. Is there another universe
with North America
with the I don't
that plays football?
Like, is a continental divide, because he said on this side of the...
He's a history teacher. He's not a geography teacher.
Actually,
Give him a break.
it is in the same
It's the same
realm.
thing.
But
I was trying to defend you. Damn.
Wow.
It's
That's what you get for doing that.
the universes where you have one alternate universe.
I
in an
will
alternate universe,
be
no.
less definitive than young Mr. Carmody, but I do believe it to be true. I believe they benefited from the loss and understanding that they're not good enough to cruise. One of the most interesting things Chris Kleiman said on Tuesday, honestly, a press conference where outside of injuries, not a lot was unveiled. He said he thought Adrian Martinez played his best game of the season at Iowa State. Now, if you are stats driven, that's a horrible take. But if you look at the kind of leadership, determination, just how he played through injury, because he was beaten up pretty badly when he came into the press conference. Yeah, I see exactly what he's saying. And I see the result of the Tulane loss more than anywhere else in Adrian Martinez. There was none of that in that game. He looked timid. He looked scared to be hurt. He looked like he didn't want to make a turnover, so he just opted not to make a play. He was so conservative and I don't want to say afraid. That's not the right word here. He was just timid. He was timid in that game, and he's not timid anymore. And I'm not sure he would be playing this way if he hadn't essentially hit rock bottom, because he turned around and played with again, let me use this word because it's going to be the word of the day, testicular fortitude against Oklahoma that helped them win that game, comes home against Tech and is again pretty good, not great, goes to Iowa State statistically okay, but he was an absolute warrior in that game. And there is no realm in Cole's mind or any other version of this universe, with a continental divide or not, that Adrian Martinez was a bulldog against Tulane. He was a timid little pup in that game, and he realized, I got to put it out there. I got to go.
I'll say maybe. They're maybe 3-0 if they beat Tulane, but only under the circumstances of a comeback. Let's say they were down 17-10 going into the fourth quarter, and K-State scores 2 touchdowns and holds Tulane out, and they win 24-17. I think that could be enough adversity for K-State to say, hey, we nearly lost that game. Now we understand, what we need to do the rest of the season kind of thing. I'm not saying that they would have gone 3-0, but I think that a comeback win in that fashion, had they done it against Tulane, I think would have been the only scenario I see where they are undefeated at this point. If they blow out Tulane, I don't think they're 6-0. I don't think they're 5-1 even. So I think that, yes, being 5-1 at this point with the loss to Tulane is probably about as what we've seen on the field this year. That's probably what you would draw it up as.
The losses to South Dakota and Missouri, the way they happened, I mean, K-State was just handed those.
The wins.
Did I say loss? Excuse me.
South Dakota and Missouri's losses.
The way that K-State won those games, they were just so easy. They were handed on a silver platter. They didn't face any adversity. And I feel like if those two games, if South Dakota and Mizzou played just okay, K-State wins that Tulane game because they would have faced some sort of adversity in those first two games, because that just came out of nowhere where they had a competitive game and they didn't know how to respond. I mean, it's just a butterfly effect in the whole season with every game.
Yeah, similar to my argument.
Yeah. Okay, I agree. Next question from Poon Saloon. All things considered.
What?
How would you rank the importance of getting, you heard it, of getting a win against each of the next 4 opponents? TCU, Oklahoma State, Texas, Baylor.
Well, you can't turn around and lose the last 2, but this team's capable of winning all of them. I don't see how they do, just out of, there's going to be a matchup issue. There's going to be an injury. There's going to be a bad call.
Is there a reason KU's not included on this?
Well, he's just talking
about they're the final opponent. They're not in the next 4.
He's just asking about the next 4. I mean,
Saloon.
Honestly, I think
that's an important game.
I'm going to refer to him as Saloon. That West Virginia is the break there. This is nothing about Kansas. I think
Neil Brown's going to be fired by then.
Mr. Poon has great respect for what Kansas football is doing, but you just got the hesitation move right in there with West Virginia, and I agree with Cole. He won't even be coaching when Kansas State comes to town. Anyhow, these are incredible matchups. You're going to catch TCU and Oklahoma State coming off. One of them is going to have a big win this weekend, and then we'll see what happens. If it's TCU, then, man, that game's huge in Fort Worth. If it's Oklahoma State, then I don't even know who Oklahoma State plays the next week, but they'll have another game before they come to Manhattan. Maybe College Game Day, maybe the big noon show from Fox. I don't know. If everyone's on course. If K-State wins at TCU, Oklahoma State beats TCU, everything's going. Yeah, they're huge. And you can't look past Baylor, even though they're struggling. They're well coached. We'll see what they've got in the tank. They've got a really fun quarterback that can make plays, and I think Texas is finding its stride. Still not sold on Texas, but I think this weekend's game with Iowa State will tell me a lot. I think that spreads up to 17.5, Mr. Gambler guy.
Jeez.
Don't look at me. I don't gamble.
Okay. And
What are you talking about?
if they can cover that, if they can score on that defense enough points to cover winning by 18, I will be impressed. I will. I don't see it. I wish I'd waited one more day to get the 17.5. Instead, I got 16.5. But I'm not confident Iowa State will cover that. Not sold on TCU or Texas right now. I think Oklahoma State's good, and I think Baylor has the potential to be a real spoiler down the stretch.
I think Texas is the most important game. And I say that because I think that the next important game is beating whoever the winner is of Oklahoma State TCU. Whoever wins that game, that's the next most important game. But I think you need to beat Texas just because, like Fitz said, they're hitting their stride. They do have the one loss already. But if you beat Texas, I think that you really lessen the chances of them being in the conference, being a competitor for the same spot in the conference championship game. I think you beat Texas, you pretty much eliminate them at that point, as long as K-State's able to take care of business. And then trying to get yourself into a three-way tie between TCU and Oklahoma State, I think is the next course of business. And then, because I think you can go 1-1 in those games and still be fine. I think if you split those, you're in great shape. And then after that, I think it's beating Baylor.
Crazy thing about this, guys, is if K-State beats TCU, they will be favorites in every single game the rest of the season.
If K-State beats TCU, they'll be favorites in every... I don't agree with that.
You don't agree with that?
I don't agree with that because what if Oklahoma State beats TCU and, for God's sakes, who do they play the week after that?
Texas.
Texas? Yeah, they won't be a favorite if they beat both them. Talk about schedules.
They have that.
Are you kidding? You get TCU, Kansas State, and Texas in a row? Oh, man. Man, that mullet is going to be tested.
So let me ask you guys this then.
Is it a sturdy mullet? We'll find out.
If K-State beats TCU, should they be favorites in every single game? If they beat TCU, let me rephrase this: TCU and Oklahoma State, because if you guys can agree with me that if they beat TCU and Oklahoma State at this point, there is no denying that K-State is in the driver's seat for the conference.
They will be. If K-State is 5-0 in conference play going into the final 4 games of the season, they will be favored in each of those games. I'm certain of it.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what Texas does. Doesn't matter what Baylor does. Well, maybe. Well, if Texas is one loss by then,
but you're not. K-State will be ranked higher.
Might be a pick.
Yeah.
It will be intriguing. And again, this will point out that spreads aren't always honest evaluations of what they think the actual spread will be. They're trying to balance the money as best they can in certain circumstances. So I can see a circumstance in which K-State is clearly the better team, but maybe Texas is a 1-point favorite. You know what I mean? Somehow manipulating the numbers so that they can get money coming in, which is a part of the gambling, the odds making I don't grasp.
Poon Saloon, the question was, how would you rank the importance? I think, is it too coach speak to say TCU 1, Oklahoma State 2, Texas 3, Baylor 4?
Yes, that's coach speak, Cole.
I would, because that's how I would rank
it. Is Texas third in the order?
Yeah.
Well, I agree with it only because one leads to another, leads to another, leads to the final one.
As what does Chris Kleiman always say? It's a 12-week
12 one-game seasons.
12 one-game seasons.
To back up what we just talked about,
that's a lot of seasons.
I'd like to point out that now he's been at K-State like 50 seasons.
Wow. So in dog years, how old is he?
That's not right either. Oh, my God. I can't. Daphne, help me out.
From Call Me T22, how big is the Oklahoma State TCU game this weekend, and what effect will the outcome have on the Cats?
Well, they have to play them both. I don't think it really impacts K-State unless one looks significantly better than the other. I guess the impact you can hope for, and this is not something I'm hoping for, that TCU gets beaten up in the course of this game and is not full strength when the Cats go down there in a week. I guess that's something you can root for. If Oklahoma State wins by double digits, which they have in all of their games, I believe. Is that correct, Cole? Just nod. They're winning games. So I guess that will be notable if Oklahoma State goes in there and wins by double digits. Does that ramp up TCU even more with a sense of urgency against K-State? I'm going to be really honest right here. I don't know what to think of TCU. They won an incredible shootout with Kansas, but I don't know what to think of Kansas either. I'm still not fully sold on Kansas or TCU. I don't know what's going on with them. I'll say this, TCU's receivers and Kansas's are amazing. That was some of the best pass catching I've seen in the course of a game in a long time, but maybe that's just how the game played out.
Can I go on record and say that I think SMU is vastly overrated, and TCU beat them by a touchdown.
Right. There's some things on that schedule. I mean, but if we start nitpicking, you come back to Tulane.
That's fine.
I mean, we can all do that, but I haven't seen that next thing from TCU that really impresses me.
TCU doesn't guard anybody. They give up so many points.
That's where I think their Achilles heel is. I think they're going to get outscored in some games.
I don't think this game against Oklahoma State's going to be close, to be honest.
You think Oklahoma State's going to rout them?
I think TCU.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I think TCU's extremely overrated. They're not the 13th best team in the country. They shouldn't be ranked above K-State. I can understand the argument of them being ranked over KU since they beat them head to head. They shouldn't even be ranked over Texas.
Because not a team that should have a game day.
No.
Yeah, look, if Oklahoma State goes in there and pounds them, maybe it bursts their bubble, particularly if they just rout that defense, which I think is entirely possible. And this will be the best defense they have faced all year. Oklahoma State's going to put a solid defense on the field. So we'll see how it all pans out. But, yeah, it's fascinating. The Big 12 this year is absolutely unpredictable. And our job is to try to make these predictions and analysis. And it's incredibly difficult. I mean, it's so hard to figure out these teams.
Well,
including K-State.
Well, last question.
Here we go.
From Crunch Cat Supreme, predict the Big 12 standings at season's end.
I would like a Crunch Cat Supreme right now. That sounds delicious. Predict what at the end?
Predict the Big 12 standings at season's end.
Regular season's end?
Oh, boy.
West Virginia at the top.
Yeah,
KU
clearly.
at the top.
KU and West Virginia
Iowa State.
Rally.
Should we start at the bottom?
Let's start at the bottom. West Virginia.
Those three, yeah.
West Virginia, Iowa State, Oklahoma.
We were just looking at Iowa State's schedule. Oh, my God, they're in trouble. They're not going to get bowl eligible unless they pull an upset. Oklahoma might be – I just feel like they're going to out-talent people.
If they beat KU on Saturday, they'll finish 7th. They won't finish 8th.
Let's start there. Does KU beat Oklahoma in Norman?
I don't think so.
No. I say yes. I think Oklahoma, as of now, has quit. They have quit on Brent Venables. So I'm not one to say you fire a coach after a year, but I can see Oklahoma doing it, not because they're losing, but because he lost his team. They are. When you hear TCU players saying they weren't even trying to tackle us, and then they get beat by their arch rival like that, that's a team with no pride, no self-worth. They don't want to play for the OU, and it's almost like half the team has no attachment to the OU. They just transferred in magically.
They can. The thing with Oklahoma is they play KU at home, and then they play Iowa State. So those are two games that they can win. I get it's in the Iowa State game's in Ames, but they can win that game. If they win those two games, and then they play Baylor, and Baylor's coming to Norman, I'm picking Oklahoma to win that game. And then they get to go play West Virginia. They should win that game too. And now all of a sudden they're back at the above 500 in the conference play.
This isn't the Oklahoma team of the last 20 years,
too much credit. You're giving them way too much credit.
They just scored 0 points against Texas.
They're mediocre at quarterback. Dylan Gabriel's okay, but now he's dinged up. I mean, and I think he will be dinged up again. Let's ask this. Who's better? Who's going to finish higher, KU or Tech?
Tech.
I think Tech. Tech's gone through
I do too.
A pretty rough phase here. I mean, they barely beat Texas at home, but we're agreeing that Texas is not a bad team right now. Mm-hmm. And then they've played where? Kansas State and Oklahoma State.
Yeah, that's tough.
I think they finish above Kansas.
Because what's KU's record? 2-1?
Yeah.
At some point, the party has to end for KU. So,
So are we saying then?
Okay. So, but we've kind of, I think we've agreed here that in some order, Kansas and Tech will be in there, Oklahoma's in there, and then Iowa State and West Virginia at the bottom. Mm-hmm. So now let's get to the top.
So it's the top 5.
Let's get to the top. Baylor's probably 5 in there, just because they already have a couple losses. They don't quite have the same. I don't think they're as good on defense as they have been.
They scream 7-5 to me this year as a whole.
Yeah, they just don't seem as efficient and dominant on defense. They were never overwhelmingly good on offense, but their defense was so good they could win a Big 12 title, which they did. So out of the remaining 4, I think you slide TCU in there.
Well, see, I'm almost ready to say you could put Baylor ahead of TCU.
I wouldn't argue against that. We'll see what happens this weekend. If they get routed by Oklahoma State, I'm all in on that.
Or if the party doesn't end, you could put KU at 5, and then you could put Baylor at 4 and TCU at 6, which I think is possible too.
Okay.
But either way, sure.
So we're down to Oklahoma State, K-State, and Texas. On paper, I'd have to say Oklahoma State. That's who I thought would win the Big 12 at the start of the year. And Texas. Honestly, on paper. But where are those games at? K-State's got them both in Manhattan.
Do you trust Steve Sarkisian over Mike Gundy and Chris Kleiman?
No.
Then there's your answer.
No, and I don't trust the psyche of that.
I'll say I trust Gundy over Kleiman, though.
That is hard to argue against. I would say right now, as we sit here, probably the top 2 will be Oklahoma State and Kansas State, which I think would be, again, really healthy for the conference to have a non-OU Texas rep in the Big 12 title game. But Texas is going to have a lot to say about it. But you do have to point out that Texas has a loss already. So they're already climbing a little bit uphill compared to 3 other programs.
But Texas has already played, like, if you want to say the three of the bottom teams, they played Texas Tech, West Virginia, and Oklahoma. They still have to play. They get to play Iowa State on Saturday, sure. But then they finish at Oklahoma State, at K-State, TCU at home, at KU, and Baylor at home.
It's brutal.
That's awful. There's no way they go 5-0 in that stretch.
We'll find out. Big 12 football is fun. You know what else is fun? The future Big 12 teams. But we'll get into that later in the week with the Daily Delivery. And by the way, my On the Line this week has to come on Thursday because we've got a Thursday game.
Thursday night football, not on Amazon Prime.
Oh, this is just a regular old college football game.
That's going to be the best football game of the night.
Who is the Thursday?
Bears and Washington.
Bears, Commanders.
Oh.
I want to watch the Chris Kleiman protege of Carson Wentz.
Oh, there we go.
Take the unders, kids.
Just be quiet. Don't say a word right now, Ryan Gilbert. Don't. That's it for the podcast. Don't say a word. Ryan Gilbert's got to go to work. We got to go to work, the 3 of us and 2 dogs, on another edition of the PowerCat Questions podcast that will come later in the week. We're working hard for you. And Zach's over here yawning again. He's killing me.
Thank you for listening to the PowerCat Podcast. Make sure you're subscribing to our show at Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or wherever you get your podcasts. PowerCat Podcast. All rights reserved. GoPowerCat.com.
With Blue Link Plus, you can access your Hyundai Tucson Limited remotely. Doors unlocked, temperature set, lost car found.
There it is.
Get complimentary class-leading Blue Link Plus. Call 562-314-4603 for complete details.